Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Aminuddin bin Abdul Halim. My matric number is 27088. So today I will explain a little bit about the background and also problem statement of this report. So for the background, the Malaysian economy since 1970 has experienced several up and down due to various factors, which are largely due to external factors in views of Malaysia's economic openness policy. Malaysia first experienced an economic crisis in 1973 following the rise in oil price, better known as the first oil shock as a result of the war between Egypt and Israel. However, the most memorable economic crisis in the history of Malaysia and also Asia was in 1997 and 1998. Surely, many know that Malaysia is one of the countries that have succeeded in dealing with this great crisis. Still, not many people know how it started. In fact, the crisis started in Thailand. However, as one of the ASEAN countries, Malaysia is caught in this currency crisis, and it is prolonged and hits the whole of Asia. Although Malaysia has a strong economic base, but due to the phenomenon called Asian inflation and crisis of confidence has had a huge impact on the country's economy. For the 5 years before 1996, Malaysia's average real GDP growth was 8.7% per annum, with a low inflation rate of around 3.8% and with an unemployment rate of only around 2.5% in 1996. Malaysia also has a relatively low foreign debt value, which is 45.2 billion US dollar in June 1997. In fact, Malaysia is categorized as a country with high saving rates and low non-performing loans. Therefore, Malaysia is not a candidate for severe economic recession. The economic phenomenon that is likely to occur to experience slow growth, but not the serious economic and financial turmoil has been the case. However, what happened was unexpected, as the value of the national currency depreciated rapidly and stock market plummeted to its lowest level in July 1997. The crisis began with a massive outflow of capital from the local financial market in Thailand before spreading quickly to neighboring countries as far as South Korea. This situation in turn has a negative impact on Malaysian economy as the whole, both the stock market and foreign direct investment in Malaysia. Now we move to the problem statement. People around the world are beginning to question and dispute the efficiency and usefulness of the traditional economic system in generating massive profits in the economy, because the capitalist economic system has shown no ability to overcome comprehensive problems such as stock market slowdown, manufacturing sectors over capacity failing, productivity and corporate sector failure. The crisis has provided opportunities the Islamic economic system to expand more effectively. That's all from me. Thank you.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Sharifah Nurul Izzah binti Tuanku, matrix number 261636. Malaysia have been hit by a financial crisis and lead to economic crisis in 1997 until 1998. The crisis had give various impact to external and internal economic views. FDI are also extremely affected. So, today I'm going to explain the impact of crisis toward FDI in Malaysia. Firstly, the impact is depreciation of ringgit Malaysia causes destroy the Malaysia comparative advantage. Before I explain further, let me give the definition of comparative advantage. Comparative advantage is an economy ability to produce a particular goods or services at lower opportunity cost than its trading partner or foreign country. A comparative advantage gives a company or country the ability to sell goods and services at a lower price than its competitor and realize stronger sale margin. But with our focus, Malaysia lost competitive advantage. In 1997, Malaysia facing depreciation of ringgit Malaysia. The depreciation of ringgit Malaysia will increase the cost of import due to the price of foreign country is relatively expensive than the price of good in Malaysia. The increased cost of import will force domestic inflationary pressure and force the export industry to become less competitive than other countries. This crisis lead to the declining import of luxury goods as the depreciation ringgit value of ringgit. Malaysia external sector become retarded causes by the less country's comparative advantage. This is show that Malaysia lost its competitive advantage due to the depreciation of ringgit Malaysia during economic crisis in 1997 until 1998. The second impact is instability of exchange rate. Instability exchange rate is instability balance of payment corresponding to the price that affect the exchange rate. It also known as degradation of actual and the real exchange rate, which is known as undervaluated misalignment if the actual real exchange rate exceed the real exchange rate and it is vice versa. Regarding the economic crisis of Malaysia in 1997 and 1998, the value of ringgit was facing depreciation. The exchange rate became an overvalued misalignment that have brought extreme crisis in balance of payment. The imbalance of payment influenced the stability of exchange rate in Malaysia. There are several tools in measurement the misalignment of exchange rate in Malaysia, which is using purchasing power parity model, productivity model, and monetary model using exchange rate. The measure is to determine whether the ringgit currency is overvalued or undervalued. The third impact of economic crisis in 1997 until 1998 toward FDI in Malaysia is the declining of capital inflow. Capital inflow is refer to the movement of money from the purpose of investment, trade or business operation in a country. Capital inflow, also defined as a value of inward of foreign direct investment, including facilities and asset transfer from foreign country to the domestic country that will contribute to the positive balance of payment. During the crisis, the behavior of FDI inflow in Malaysia suffered extremely contraction in capital inflow, which is total $12 billion. It was a large value of contraction of Malaysia FDI history. During 1997, there were less investment activities in asset undertaken by foreign country in Malaysian corporate due to the declining activity of cross-border education that brings the negative effect on capital inflow in Malaysia. Malaysia also did not resort the promoting amongst the domestic companies about the education and the mergers activity by foreign countries. This situation brings the contraction of capital and shareholder cannot expand their net worth. Besides that, Malaysian bank restructuring in Malaysia also cannot happen, and all this bring to the declining capital inflow in Malaysia. Lastly, the impact of Malaysia economic crisis in 1997 until 1998 is bring the construction in foreign and domestic private investment. Private investment had a strong relationship with FDI in terms of capital inflow. It can be the situation where the foreign MNE use borrow credit or loanable fund, invest in domestic countries and demand loanable fund from domestic fund. Those investments are highly dependent on domestic interest rate and the domestic economic environment. There are also declining demand for loanable fund from foreign and domestic companies due to the high volatility of Malaysia interest rate. The volatility of inflation and the exchange rate will decrease the international trade, especially on higher transaction risk investment. This situation caused Malaysia facing dramatic downturn financing and borrowing fund from foreign and domestic investor and bring up the less liquidity domestic capital condition.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Nashifa Amanis binti Ahmad and my matric number is 272736. Now I'm gonna present the solution by government. To begin with, one of the government solution is fixing exchange rate. The most essential goal became the stabilization of the currency rate. The currency rate chosen on was RM3.80 to $1, similar to the rate when the fixed exchange rate system was established by the Prime Minister in September 1998. In contact with commercial banks and other recognized financial institutions, the central bank utilized the rate for exchanging dollar to ringgit, and those institutions are required to use it in the public monetary dealings. Since then, the exchange rate between ringgit and dollar remains steady. In addition, government policy to prevent overseas speculation and trade in the ringgit policy has been taken to minimize and eliminate international trade in ringgit and repatriate a significant amount of financial assets denominated by ringgit, for example cash and saving account, held abroad in the banks overseas and other institutions back into the country. This policy basically ended the offshore trade in Malaysia ringgit and ringgit assets, which included operation and ownership of bank accounts called ringgit outside Malaysia. Furthermore, on September 1, 1998, certain steps were implemented to control outflow of cash. Among the policy directed at foreigner and foreign-owned money were the following: non-residents who own share in firm listed on the local stock market must keep the share of the profit from the sale of the share for minimum of 1 year from the date of purchase. The goal of this action was to deter foreign speculative short-term trade in local share and to prevent capital outflow for at least a year. Second, non-resident corresponding banks and non-resident holding corporations were no longer authorized to use domestic credit facilities. Previously, domestic credit up to 5 million was allowed. The activity and transfer of ringgit-denominated money in foreign accounts, included those owned by non-resident, were subject to restriction. Transfer between non-resident corporates account and people residing outside Malaysia need prior clearance for any amount. After September 30, 1998, transfer from external account to resident account will require authorization. Among the measures addressed the local inhabitants were the following. Residents were only permitted to import ringgit notes worth up to 1,000 ringgit in any amount of foreign currency and only export ringgit notes worth up to 1,000 ringgit and foreign currency for up to 10,000 ringgit equivalent. With the exception of the import charges, residents were able to pay non-resident up to 10,000 ringgit or their foreign currency equivalent. Previously, the limit was set at 100,000 ringgit. Resident investment in all forms overseas and non-trade guarantee payment needs authorization. Approval is necessary. The prescribed export payment method will only be available in foreign currency. In former times, it was authorized from an external account in foreign money or ringgit. For foreign exchange sums over 10,000 ringgit equivalent, the resident need prior clearance to make payment to non-resident for investment outside the country. Ringgit credit facilities were not authorized to resident by non-resident. The capital limitation on local residents involved a broader variety of activities and were in fact designed to prevent local-owned money flowing, if not more than foreign-owned money constraint. Local people, however, did not restrict convertibility of money for business purposes. Then, government also provides stock market measure and closure of overseas trade in Malaysia's security. Additional control were imposed on 1 September 1998 at the Kuala Lumpur Stock Exchange, KLSE, while the main objective of the policy was to reduce the nation's potential outflow through the stock market. These have been some of the action. Only through KLSE or a recognized stock exchange and the KLSE trading system were to take place the clearance of security traded in the KLSE. New standard for disclosure, including shareholder recipient, must be established in all transactions, and only one recipient must each central depository system account operated by the recipient. Stockbroking companies could engage only in direct off-market dealing such as closing and merit deals. The credit of the security to the central depository system account of holder of shares was to be carried out by all fresh issuance. Effective measures lead to the completion of existing secondary market in international marketplaces for trendy inventories of KLSE listed company, since trade was limited exclusively to KLSE only today. Next is government guarantee of depositor funds. As a result of public trust in local financial institutions, many depositors began in 1997 to move their money to international banks and abroad. The government has said that to prevent potential execution of some institutions of local banks in general, it will guarantee the depositor money in business and regulated financing business. It has restored depositor trust. Lastly, government also maintaining some basic national policy and socio-economic goals. Therefore, a key component of the Malaysian approach was to guarantee the sum of each national policy were maintained. The following policy included: the government maintain its policy to govern foreign cooperation and mention in the local economy and the degree of engagement in it. Malaysia's foreign investment policy is one of the most permissive. Second, the government helped local business and financial institutions with financial problem or near insolvency. It was in many circumstances not permitted or frowned upon to local authorities in nation undertaking IMF reform amidst economic problem. Third, Basically, the goal to achieve balance of asset and equity distribution between locals and foreigners and between locals community has been preserved, called in Malaysia as the new economic policy. Next, the government has also succeeded in maintaining socially oriented measures such as price regulation for several key consumer goods and subsidy for a number of consumer products and farmer. For example, government fertilizer subsidy for rice farmer. It was also able to preserve its own privatization policy and the scope of the rate of the liberalization in finance and commerce.
In conclusion, we can conclude that this economic crisis has a negative impact on the national economy, especially on foreign direct investment in the country. However, the presence of Tun Dr. Mahathir as Prime Minister at that time has led us to successfully emerge from this crisis as a result of the wise action taken by him. I think that's all from our group. Thank you.